Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company and the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
And I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning.
We are here this morning with another podcast session, and the image behind us today is an infrared photograph. Many years ago, I got into infrared photography, a couple of different wavelengths, up around 800 nanometers and 1200 nanometers. 800 still has some color, and you have to do color swapping in order to get images that begin to make sense. In the higher range, around 1200 or so, the color disappears and you get black and white renderings. Greens, for example, become stark white, almost looks like a snowy landscape. This particular shot was taken in Hamburg, Germany. It was, we were on the road and stopped for a quick rest and found this unusual landscaped, these trees or bushes, and I had an infrared camera with me. I actually got so into it that I took a couple of my DSLRs and converted them to infrared. Had to send them out somewhere, and they tweaked with the lenses and took out some things and added some things, and so all these cameras are useful for now is shooting in infrared.
Do you remember about 5 years ago, I actually brought an older Sony camera in, and it had a fixed Carl Zeiss lens on it, and we only to find out that you already had one.
Right.
And so you and I traded because the one that I had been a little more lightly used.
You know, I forgot about that, and I was trying to think of the brand of that camera because I lent that out a decade ago, and I never got it back. But yeah, that was a Sony camera. It had the long lens on it, and it had a native capability to shoot in infrared or in standard
That's
color.
right, that's right.
Yeah, that was one of the first groundbreaking cameras that pushed people into infrared. It's a cool hobby. Any of you interested in photography, if you want to expand your range and your results, there's always a surprise in infrared. The detail oftentimes is just incredible. You can shoot in much lower light conditions because it really doesn't care about light. It cares about things other than light, temperature and such.
Fascinating.
But anyway, that is the shot that's behind us right now. It's an infrared image from Hamburg, Germany. You know, in the last session, I started to touch on our history in the EV space, and I thought I would complete that this morning. Around 2014 or so, I bought a Tesla Roadster, and I wanted to go 100% battery electric vehicle as my daily driver. We had been driving Priuses, my wife and I, prior to that time, and the Tesla Roadster became my daily driver, and I was just fascinated, not just by the performance and power that this thing had, but by the fact that you never had to go to a gas station anymore, that you could just come home at night, plug in, get a full tank of gas by morning, and you were doing your Go Green part. Anyway, it wasn't but a year or so that one of the field engineers walked by my car as I was taking my lunch pail out and asked about the black box in the trunk, which was the three-phase inverter that converts the DC to AC to drive the car or to power the car. And when I answered his question that it's a three-phase inverter, he said, you know, we repair those. And I realized that we have field engineers all over the United States that service UPSs and critical power equipment, lighting inverters and such. And the technology is identical. It's the same thing. We're taking a bunch of DC that's, in the case of a UPS, inside cabinets in a data center somewhere, and they're usually lead-acid batteries. For some reason, they're still using old lead-acid batteries in that world. And it converts all of that to three-phase AC to power servers, network racks, and all of the equipment inside a co-location, a cloud-based operation, or a data center, a computer room. Within 2 months, we had hired someone that claimed to be able to repair Tesla Roadsters here locally. Came in as a tech manager.
That's right.
And with a secondary task, which was, let's see if we can find some Tesla customers, since we know how to repair the electronics. And
if I remember right, one of the very first batteries we repaired was actually a Toyota Prius battery.
It was.
And then shortly after that, had a Model S come in that was collision damaged, and we still have one of our managers driving that Model S, in fact.
I remember those days. We initially were servicing different types of EVs that were available at the time, and there were very few. The Chevy Volt, I think, or Bolt, and there was a Ford Fusion, I think, that we worked on. And
yeah, that was a plug-in hybrid as opposed to a true battery electric.
right, and then lots of hybrids. That's true. And we used to repair the batteries in them. You don't have to change the whole battery pack in those cars in order to make the car operate again.
Right.
But so anyway, that was 2014, and the word got out quickly. We repaired our first Tesla Roadster, came in from the Bay Area, and at the time the customer was facing a $10,000 PEM replacement. That's the power electronics module or the three-phase inverter, which is the only option that Tesla was offering at the time. And anyway, the car got shipped to us. We repaired it. We even rebuilt it for about $2,300. And the word got out quickly, hey, there's an option besides Tesla for repairing the Tesla Roadster. And we've never looked back since then. So we've got a question from TikTok from Kurt Hopkins 641. Do you guys repair other electric vehicles? You know, at this point, we have confined ourselves to Tesla. Eventually, we will go broaden that again. But we get lots of requests for repairing other types of EVs, and we found that to get really good at any one thing, you have to get laser focused. And at this point, Roadsters are our slam dunk repair option, and Model S's or other out-of-warranty Tesla vehicles now are beginning to show up.
Right now, we are saying that we've got more demand than we have room to accommodate even on the Model S's.
We do.
And the Roadsters do keep us busy. So I know we want to be able to do repairs in the future, though, of all electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm. And we want to prompt all of our platforms, LinkedIn, the Shorts, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, to ask questions. And let us know where you're coming in from. We're here to try to answer all of the questions that you may have. Anything that we can't answer in this session, we will research, and we will bring those answers to the next podcast. So getting back for a moment to our history, we began repairing Teslas primarily. Roadsters, they're shipped to us from all over the United States today. Parts from Roadsters are shipped to us from various parts of the world. We have one that's actually coming in now from Europe, which is that famous world-traveling Roadster that actually went around the world 10 years ago. And it is coming here within the next 3 weeks or so for a PEM rebuild and for a battery replacement in partnership with Tesla. Tesla, the local service center, is going to handle that portion, and we're going to rebuild a power electronics module. So it's kind of taking us into the finishing this story. Today, we are in partnership with Tesla. We find them to be a wonderful vendor, customer, / all those things. And we are both focusing on taking good care of their customers. What I also find fascinating is in this world of EVs since 2014, look at all the companies that have cropped up now that are offering electric vehicles.
Oh, it's simply stunning. You know, back in 2019, I went with a peer group and talked to them at the time about all the different manufacturers, either current manufacturers or up-and-coming companies that were going to be producing EVs within the next 5 years. That 5 years has come, and there are even more companies than what I thought there were going to be at the time.
Mm-hmm. What I find humorous is that so many of them ignored the whole EV revolution for the longest time. I think they were curious, confused, and suddenly realized, oh my God, we got to jump on the bandwagon. So today, you know, you find that the majority of incumbents are highly focused and even making statements like, we're going to stop making ICE vehicles by a particular year, 2030, 2035, and we're going to transition to electric vehicles.
By all means. I think some of the companies leading the charge are some of the big European manufacturers, such as Volvo and Audi. But our domestic companies, Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, have certainly jumped on board as well.
Mm-hmm. Looks like we have a question up there.
Yeah, David D. from the Bay Area. Welcome, David. Have you seen frequent cases of wind noise inside the car coming from seals around doors and windows? have had the problem with his 2018 Model S from day one, and Tesla has never been able to address it.
You know, it's very rare. I know that we have seen problems like this, but it's infrequent, probably one a year or so. The fix typically was a warranty issue at the Tesla service centers, which got repaired. They tore out the weather stripping, the seals, and replaced them completely. If there is a nagging problem that isn't being resolved at the service center, I would suggest escalating the issue. Tesla does have roving experts that go from service center to service center. And this may be outside the range of the local guys to address. Or there may be a design problem. Maybe the frame is tweaked or a bit different.
It's possible. I know with the 2018, actually I have a 2012 Model S and had a repair done on some of the door. Basically, it was a door handle that had to be replaced. At the time, I ended up with the same type of wind noise coming from the car, and it was simply a matter of the little triangle window up in the very, very front had not been remounted properly. It was a very simple repair that we were able to get taken care of. So it's not always a really serious thing. It may be a fairly simple thing.
Okay. All right. Oh, Eric Korda. How are you, Eric, from LinkedIn?
Good to see you, Eric, or good to hear from you. Eric says, nice to see you, gentlemen. Glad to see you pressing forward and bringing great new options to the repair and overhaul market. Eric Korda is one of our field engineers from around that 2014 to 2015 time period, and actually led our repair depot and became our director of operations for a short while as well.
We wish you the best, Eric. Haven't heard from you in a while. I hope you're still brewing beer, by the way. Your story about the perfection that he addressed his beer brewing with was just inspiring. What he actually used to do was to replicate beers from various parts of the world. He would get the hops and the yeasts from that area, but then in order to replicate the water mineral content, he would Google it and research what kind of minerals were in the water that they were using, replicate that, and he came up with a reasonable facsimile of what that beer was in that territory.
That is fascinating.
All right, so we have a picture. Are we ready to throw up a picture there, studio team? The Hearse picture. Okay. We knew this would happen, and we were all waiting for it. But there is actually a company now that is making an EV hearse, a funeral wagon, basically. And it's a company that's in the Netherlands called Derks, D-E-R-K-S. If you Google that, you can probably get a lot more information on this. So here's what the article says about this. This is a Model 3 platform vehicle. And you can see it's definitely much larger. It's bloated. It's a bit on steroids, but you have to do that in order to fit a casket inside something like this. So they say that this new Model 3 Hearse shows that everything is going electric, even for your last trip in a vehicle. Hearses are actually perfect for electrification. And here are the reasons they give. They drive mostly relatively short distances from the funeral home to churches or to graveyards, and they generally have plenty of time to charge in between drives. They are mostly built aftermarket on top of existing vehicles. You know, what jumps to mind is Cadillac was a popular choice for a hearse conversion. Lincoln Continental, any of those large, luxury land boats that could easily be stretched even further.
And yeah, at the time they would actually have to basically split the car in half and stretch it. And I believe they've done the same thing with this. They split this Model 3 in half and stretched it by almost 3 feet, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it gives a dimension here. Let me see if I can find that. They were building, by the way, hearses with Model S's already. I didn't realize that, but anyone Googling that could probably find some of those as well. And but this is the first time that anyone has seen a Tesla Model 3 hearse. It has a massive tailgate and electric curtains all around the back. The price of a vehicle like this, a conversion, is around $200,000. And their final statement in this article is, "Tell me you're not dying to get into this Tesla Model 3 Hearse." So anyway, for those of you that are looking for unique applications for electric vehicles, here's one that, as I said, we all knew it was coming, and it looks like even the world of funeral homes and transport is moving toward electric.
From TikTok, Jason DeFoss from California says, "Good morning," and good morning, Jason. Also from TikTok, Bert is asking if he can get a job. He says he has his own sunglasses.
If he has sunglasses, that's probably a slam dunk hire, wouldn't you say?
I would think so.
And for those of you curious, which a lot of people typically are, why the sunglasses? Well, we're going to do a video with a big reveal one of these days. But in the meantime, we like the element of mystery. What we suggest is put on your own sunglasses and watch our podcast, and maybe some clues will begin to pop up. So, LinkedIn, Eric Korda, this was the manager that we spoke about a few minutes ago who brews beer. He still has his water table charts, he says. Excellent, Eric. Give our regards to the family as well. All right. It looks like South Korea and Tesla are beginning some dialogue regarding locating a Giga Factory there.
That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. As we had mentioned in previous podcasts, Tesla is looking at locating into other regions of the world. Canada is definitely under consideration. Mm-hmm. We talked about Mexico. They're talking to in fact, there's even a lane marked Tesla at one of the border crossings in Texas, so that once construction starts, they don't have to wait and go through the long lines, the customs lines, or the... So it looks like Korea is also beginning dialogue. There are some obvious advantages to that. Another location in Asia. They already have one in China, of course. Two are located in the U.S., California and Texas, and one in Europe, in Germany. Local authorities in South Korea see the Tesla factory as an unprecedented opportunity to increase the competitiveness of their regions. If the company is located there, it will also attract investment not only from it, but from other global companies as well, and most likely EV companies. They tend to go where the labor pool is and where the job opportunities are for drawing staff.
Yes, we've certainly seen that in Arizona now with Electromechanica, with their Solo car. Nikola, Lucid has their factories down in Casa Grande as well. So there's definitely that talent pool. In South Korea, you know, there are some pros and cons to that. The South Koreans are known of being one of the hardest working cultures in the world. The South Koreans put in more time on a weekly basis in their work effort than anywhere else. They've also got good engineering talent. GM even raves about that with the plant that GM has in South Korea. With them being more stable than China, a little bit better quality on their electric grid, and being a free trade partner with the US, those are definitely some big advantages. One thing that a potential landmine that Elon will have to look out for, though, is the labor. The union culture in South Korea is stronger than anywhere else in the world. And pretty much every large company in South Korea is going to be a unionized shop. And we know that Elon Musk does not care to work with the unions very much.
We knows how he feels about unions, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
That's an interesting side note.
There is obviously as well that neighbor to the north that might decide at any time that they want to lob a couple of nuclear missiles over and take Seoul off the map.
As Trump said, Rocket Man.
Yes.
One thing I've heard also about South Korea is that they're very technologically advanced as far as what they provide their citizens to. In the city of Seoul, for example, in basically any city park, you can get gigabit internet easily, and it's just readily available. Whereas here in the U.S., you know, that's one of the premium packages that you have to pay for to get that kind of speed. That's typical for everybody to have that there.
So they tend to embrace technology, it sounds like.
Yep. and it's much more community-based, social provided, government provided kind of a thing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Jason DeFoss from TikTok in California has shared again. He says he's a big fan. Thank you for sharing information about the EV revolution. I'm a fire service instructor and share your information often. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Jason. I think we might have talked about this in the last session. We've got a Hall of Flame museum here in Phoenix, and the gentleman currently running it is an ex-fireman. And he was telling me about a lithium-ion fire that occurred here with the utility, Arizona Power Services or System Service. APS, right. This happened in 2019 apparently, and they had a Connex or a sea container full of lithium-ion batteries that were being used to power some inverters. And they had a fire in that sea container. So the fire department showed up, and they did their best to put it out. And of course, as we know, lithium fires are extremely difficult to extinguish. They tend to develop a momentum, generate their own oxygen, and continue to burn. And all you can hope to do is cool it enough to where it quietly or it finally subsides. But this is a well-documented issue in 2019, actually, here locally. He was giving me a bit more detail. Apparently, they thought they had the fire out, and it was smoldering. So 4 firemen were tasked with going to investigate what the smoldering was about. Now, mind you, this is a 40-foot sea container. There was a steel door on the front of that. And as they were approaching this steel door, the Connex exploded. And later on, they feel that there was hydrogen that had built up inside that had finally ignited or blew up. Mm-hmm. It turns out that these 4 firemen were from the city of Peoria here, and they were probably some of the most fit firemen on the planet. You know how firemen don't have a lot to do. They're kind of like the Maytag repairmen. So what they do is they give them gyms at the firehouses, yes. And these guys spend a lot of time pumping iron, and they develop some incredible bodies and get very fit. Well, these 4 guys were some of the fittest, I guess, in the Peoria Fire Department. When this door blew, it actually pushed them back through a chain link fence and another 70 feet beyond that. Broke almost every bone in their body, just to show you the amount of energy that is resident in a lithium-ion type fire application at times. So that was an interesting story, one that's definitely sobering. We can't wait until we get away from lithium-ion battery packs. And of course, there are a lot of new cool technologies that the scientists are working on because of demand. We have a lot of investment money being poured into that. But at some point, lithium-ion at least will be a thing of the past, and we won't have this intense fire risk that we do now with these batteries. Looks like a few more questions. Trucker Alistair is back from YouTube. Good morning, Gruber Motors. Love your podcast, and I hope to hear a lot more. Greetings from Canada. Okay, that's right. We did talk to him from Canada the last podcast.
And Scott Gruber, great last name, by the way, Scott, from YouTube, asks, hello, do you think wireless car charging will become a reality in the near future?
It will replace what we currently do, which is plugging something in somewhere. In fact, we'll probably be laughing at that a couple decades from now and saying, you actually used to have to plug in whenever you wanted to go or to continue on your trip. Yeah, inductive coupling charging is definitely far more efficient. It is the future, and especially with the demands for faster charging and quicker times, it'll be the only way that we can do that. Eventually, the cable to connect to your semi-truck is going to be, like a tree trunk because of the amount of energy that we're needing to pump in there to meet the time frame estimates that people are projecting for fast charging.
I've seen where some test work is being done to put wireless charging into places like bus routes, where you have a standardized route, charging stations go up under bus stops, and then the bus is continually charging and discharging. It's a very interesting concept to see.
And then, of course, we always have solar and, photoreactive paint, for example, that actually generates electricity. This is in our future. This is what transportation will become eventually, completely self-sustaining.
Most definitely. We have another question from Instagram, a click outside. All electric cars should be all-wheel drive, or that's more of a comment. Many electric cars are already all-wheel drive. Pretty much if an electric car has two motors or more, as we saw with the Lucid Sapphire recently, these motors will power all of the wheels on the electric car. It's only the single motor cars that are either front wheel or rear wheel drive.
And the technology already exists for wheel-based motors. We're still, in a Tesla Model S, for example, you still have a transaxle, you have gears, you have, the conversion of that kinetic energy to where the car needs it and to the half shafts. The future will be comparable to the e-bikes, where you actually have a circular wheel that has a motor embedded within it. And at that point in time, you're going to have four wheels, you might as well have four motors.
And it's been 30 or 40 years that this actual concept has been in place. Laterno, who makes the really, really large mining vehicles, the ones that have the wheels that are 50 or 60 feet tall in some cases, typically have a large diesel generator that runs 4 electric motors, and 1 motor is attached to each wheel, and that's how they move these hundreds of tons per load of mining materials.
Fascinating. In the 70s, we had a mining operation. I worked for Digital Equipment at the time, repairing mainframes, computers, for those of you that aren't up to speed on that. And some of the sites were so remote, like in Baghdad, Arizona, it was a large open pit mining operation. There were really no roads there, so they had a company airplane, and they picked me up at Deer Valley Airport here and flew me into this site. And anyway, they had a little PDP-11 in the office, got repaired. But I remember going outside back to this little airport landing strip, and one of those large earth-moving machinery trucks came by.
Oh, really?
With tires that were about 10 to 12 feet tall, probably about 5 feet wide. And what was amazing was I was standing on a gravel road, and as that truck came by, the ground became like jello from the weight. And it actually began to shift and move around. It was fascinating to be near one of those behemoths, those big machines. These aren't the types of machines that you can drive on the road. They were assembled right there at the mine, and they never left because there were no roads to accommodate something that large. But yeah, cool technology even at that time. Let's see. Let's go to Jason DeFoss in Canada. I think that's cut up. Yeah, I don't know what Trucker McAllister means. Hello, do you guys sell these window wire notch made from aluminum?
The window regulator.
Oh, the window regulator? Oh, yes, all day long. On our website, grubermotors.com, under the Model S heading, we actually have a billet aluminum notched ferrule, replacing the plastic ferrule, which now extends the life of that window regulator probably well beyond your car.
Probably does. And they're a great seller. I think our biggest issue with that is just keeping them in stock. They sell so quickly. Action Matt from TikTok asks whether or not LiPo batteries are a better option.
Well, there are a lot of improving options and better options coming down the pike.
I know the LiPo battery is such a new technology. It's definitely an interesting technology. It's being embraced, but I'm not sure if we know whether or not that's going to be a better option long term as of yet.
And Mark, didn't you say you were familiar with the big plant they're building in Tucson for that?
That's right. There's a large plant being built down in Tucson. It's going to eventually house probably about 300 workers, and they are going to be building lithium iron or the LiPo battery packs.
Personally, I hope that we figure out graphene or something that's safer and can do more. I think we're still a few years out from that, but I like the idea of solid state more than relying on lithium for the future. Personally,
We're all intrigued by the graphene solution, nanotechnology, supercapacitors, solid state batteries. The production challenges right now are cost prohibitive to some extent for any mass production to meet the demand of what the vehicles that are being produced now
By all means.
require. But lithium ion is on its way out. It's temporary. We'd love to see that graphene solution start taking hold. And that was a question from Jason DeFoss.
Yeah, where he asks if lithium ion is on its way out, what new battery chemistries are we going to see? In addition to the lithium ion chemistry, which is new and looks like it's getting closer to commercial, we've talked about graphene, sodium ion or potassium ion batteries are potentially a thing that's going to be in the future as well. They don't have the energy density of lithium ion. That's one of their biggest issues right now. They just don't have the ability to store as much energy as the cars need. But they are getting closer to commercial application as well.
This takes me back into the 80s in the last century when we got into the critical power business. We realized that there were modular batteries, hot swappable batteries, going into uninterruptible power systems. And if you wanted to increase the size of your UPS, you would essentially add a power module, a 10 kVA or 25 kVA power module, along with a battery pack, and that would then increase your capacity. Well, these battery packs were lead acid. They were absorbent glass mat batteries, but still lead acid batteries, and with maybe a 3 to 5 year lifespan. And when these batteries expired, they were being thrown into landfills. And one of the things that we pioneered here at Gruber Motor Company was the rebuilding of those battery packs. We realized that you could open up the clamshells, you could open up the metal housing that these batteries were in, and then replace the individual cells. They were typically 12-7 type batteries up to 12-12 batteries, 12 volt 12 amp hour or 12 volt 7 amp hour, and connected together with fast on tabs. So we began a recycling effort even in the 80s, and today that's a large part of our business is rebuilding uninterruptible power system batteries.
Yeah, and we take great pride in not throwing away any of the batteries. Virtually every lead acid battery that comes in ends up going to one of our recycling partners. It's interesting to note on the EV side or as well as the UPS side, lead acid technology is what batteries were invented of by Volta back in the 1860s, and yet it's still, for its weight, lead acid is still the most energy dense battery system that we have, and that's been one of the larger issues that people have had to try to deal with as they transition to the vehicle power, trying to get away from the things that are so environmentally harmful and toward things that are not as rare as lithium or cobalt and not as harmful as the cobalt or the sulfuric acid or lead.
In the meantime, we have companies like Redwood Materials, which we talk about often, that are recycling the existing lithium-ion battery packs, and with a 0% waste stream, which is just amazing because that means everything that's going in is going back out and being reused.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that in the future.
The thing that we didn't talk about in this podcast is, too, what is the future of DC storage or energy storage? Fusion, something Jesse is very excited about. Once that becomes commercially viable, this whole notion of having to store DC energy may go away.
By all means, maybe a little bit closer to that Back to the Future Mr. Fusion thing than we thought.
So according to Reuters, San Francisco, the electric vehicles over the last 2 years apparently are beginning to decline in valuation. They're saying that the average price for a used Tesla in July peaked at about $67,000. And by November, that was down to $55,000. So a 17% decrease in used electric vehicles. Part of the jump was the situation in Eastern Europe, the expectation of increased gasoline prices, and EVs began to look very attractive as an alternative or as a hedge. A lot of customers apparently were taking an advantage of the higher used vehicle prices in selling their used EVs in favor of getting brand new ones. So it seems that that has slowed down, just to give you an example of percentages, the change in Tesla used vehicle prices was 17% from July to November. However, the overall used car market during that time only dropped 4%, and that was according to Edmunds data. So it looks like things may be slowing down.
A little bit. I was very fascinated when as we talked about this, and so I just took a little unscientific research here. I went to cars.com and I took a look and to see what's available and how much does it cost. I found a 2014 Model S. It has 39,000 miles and it's still listed at $47,000. 2020 Model S long range with 20,000 miles is up around $70,000. 2018 Model 3 mid-range with 30,000 miles on it is $40,000. Now when the Model 3's new base price, brand new, is only $47,000 or the performance is $63K, it's still not very much of a drop in price. Mm-hmm. And on the Model S, yes, there is a little bit more drop at a base price of $105,000 for a brand new Model S or a Plaid for $136,000. But even still, looking back 2 years and only dropping $30,000 from the base price for a Model S to go down to $70K is not much depreciation. So there was room for them to fall, I think, and they're becoming a little more available, but you still pay a premium price for a Model S or a Model 3 online.
You know, one of the videos that we created a couple of weeks ago actually addresses some of this, in that the valuation standards applied to electric vehicles come from the ICE world, the internal combustion engine world. And it's an unfair metric to use for valuing EVs, because EVs are more about wear in terms of age rather than mechanical wear. So mileage doesn't make that much of a difference with an EV. However, those rules are still being applied. What brought this to a head was a few weeks ago we have a Tesla Roadster customer that's trying to sell his Roadster. He's moving out of the country, and he really would like to see it gone, but he's got like 90,000 miles on this Roadster. And you know, people are terrified of that high mileage parameter associated with his car. Really, 90,000 miles on a Roadster that's well taken care of, kept inside a garage, you know, maintained, doesn't mean that much. There's far more emphasis on the electronics in a Roadster and the wear that takes place inside the power electronics module, for example. What a lot of Roadster owners don't realize is there's growing deferred maintenance inside the electronics, invisible to them because it's buried inside the black box. Things like 21 electrolytic capacitors that have an 8-year shelf life that many times now are going on 14 years. And the problem with this electrolytic capacitor is it is a filter in the high voltage section of the inverter, where 400 volts is commonly buzzing around at very high amperage. And when an electrolytic capacitor begins to fail, it dries up. It's like a battery. It has fluids inside, or an electrolyte. And as that dries up, it becomes resistive. It places an additional load on the inverter, makes it work harder. Now you have transistors that are being compromised. But in a worst-case scenario, in Germany years ago, we had a capacitor inside a Roadster power electronics module actually blow its top. And when that happened, you've got tin foil, basically, aluminum foil, that is being sprayed throughout the interior of that electronic module, which is, of course, conductive. And this particular power electronics module actually survived. They were able to clean the debris, vacuum out all of the shrapnel, and the PEM was actually able to continue to function.
Wow. You know, and you're absolutely right. Age is actually more important than mileage when it comes to these batteries. I saw something recently on Inside EVs where a gentleman decided to try to take and figure out how long a battery on a Model S might last. And what he came up with, normal driving conditions, 20,000 miles a year, a 3-year test, full documentation of how he did this, and his results showed that he had a little bit less than 10% degradation on his battery range over 60,000 miles. He said that based on this, a typical battery will probably last anywhere from 300 to 500,000 miles, and 1,000,000 miles is not out of the question. Well, when you look at an ICE engine, in most vehicles that are internal combustion related, even with modern technology, 300,000 miles is pretty much the limit on those engines. Some engines may be able to go a little bit further if they're well taken care of, but engines for 1,000,000 miles are pretty much relegated to the long-haul truckers and the big diesel engines. Your typical automobile, that your grocery getter as it is, will never last for 1,000,000 miles.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, in an ICE vehicle, all of that mechanical stuff is wearing. You've got bearings that wear out. You've got piston rings that are losing metal as it ages. You have cylinder bores that are expanding as the metal is constantly rubbing, despite, lubrication and all the rest of that. So, yeah, it's definitely an unfair comparison to use or to apply the same mileage rules to an EV resale value. Looks like we've got a YouTube Shorts question from Deep Value Investing. He says he has a 2017 Model S with full self-driving, appreciated just with FSD about $2,500. He bought it for $45,000, but was worth $68,000 at its height. So he's asking the current price, is it something in between those two?
No, he's saying it is.
Oh,
Saying
it
that
is.
the current
Okay,
price is
statement.
somewhere in
All right,
between.
gotcha.
It's just a statement.
And I think that's a good point. We were talking about in our last podcast, the full self-driving has gone up from $2,500 all the way to $12,000 as an add-on. So it would make complete sense that the FSD itself would appreciate in value even on a used car.
We got word this morning, actually, that 55,000 people in the United States currently are without power. And in some of these areas where they're lacking power, the Tesla power walls are installed. And people are beginning to realize that this has some benefit in that even though you're living on the grid, you can go off the grid at times like this when the power is gone and actually continue to run your freezer or your refrigerator or get some warmth in the house.
You know, the Ford Lightning is the first of many that I've seen advertised that has two-way charging as well. Ford will take on their higher-end Lightnings and put a charger into the house for the Ford owner, where the owner is going to be able to plug in and power the house from the Ford, very similar to a Powerwall. And if you think about it, an 85 kilowatt battery could power a complete house with furnace and everything for 2 or 3 days.
Amazing, yeah. Vehicle to grid, V2G.
Yes.
So it looks like during Q3 of 2022 in the earnings report, the Tesla shared the production of the new 4680 cells are gaining momentum, and they tripled in the third quarter of this year compared to the prior one. The news today is that Tesla has now reached the ability to build 1,000 packs per day of these 4680 cell packs. And that means that they're going to be putting more into vehicles, and it looks like the supply chain problems may are starting to get alleviated somewhat regarding these batteries.
Now, for those that don't know, the 4680 cells, those are like large coffee cans, where the 1650 cells are more like the vape pen batteries, correct?
Correct, yes. The 4680 cell has a lot of notoriety right now because there's an associated expectation with it based on a Sandy Munro teardown that these battery packs are not repairable. And there are a structural battery pack that's heavily impregnated with a potting compound, which makes it difficult to get inside. As we've said repeatedly, in our world, in the independent repair space, repairing Tesla vehicles, our challenges are to solve problems like this, to find ways to repair, just like we did with the Roadster and like we did with the Model S battery pack. So for us, the jury is still out whether this is a repairable battery pack until we get our hands on one. We're actually able to do some reverse engineering. We're not going to weigh in on whether these are repairable or not. So,
another one from YouTube Shorts, Deep Value Investing is replying to us again, says, I love the 4680 cells. I hope the older versions can be swapped for the newer cells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another question that comes up often. Will these newer battery packs be usable in the older vehicle cars? And I can't imagine that a manufacturer would skip that opportunity by making them retro. There's a term for that I'm groping for. Retro.
Backwards compatible.
Backwards compatible. There you go. That's one of the technical terms. Yes. Can't imagine that won't be the case. It looks like from TikTok, Gil Yee. What's with the sunglasses? We get that question often. Some of the answers that we've gotten before, or the speculations are you guys hungover? Well, no, neither Mark or I drink that heavily, so I don't think that's the problem. But my favorite one, which I share often, was when I was doing a video over at Gruber Motor Company with my sunglasses, somebody pointed out and said, man, he sure does move fast for a blind man. So let's see what else we have here. We've got more questions streaming in, but we've got some news items. Do you have anything, Mark, you want to share?
I do actually have one thing, and this is one that I want to throw out to the community as well. I saw on Wired recently an article back on the 26th of this month. Is more range always better? The contention is that when we drive, fewer than 5% of our trips on average are greater than 30 miles. Almost all the trips that we take, even whether it's commuting to and from work, taking the kids to and from school, or going grocery shopping or errand running, typically they're less than 30-mile trips. But range is one of the automakers' primary marketing methods. If you look at the cars that are out there that are being marketed, you're going to see range, you're going to see 0 to 60 times, you're going to see horsepower. Pretty much those three things. You may also see torque. Rare elements such as cobalt and lithium ion are being consumed. And the author, Gregory Barber from Wired, actually mentions that for the cost in elements and materials to make one Ford F-150 Lightning battery, you could make 4 Nissan Leaf batteries, and the Nissan Leaf would have almost half the range of the Ford. Some of the solutions that they talk about in this article are to plan stops of 20 to 30 minutes if you're going to longer trips. Just kind of change the way you're behaving on the trip. Instead of planning on go in, gas up, and leave, realize that maybe if you go in and have a coffee, go in, shop at the store, take your bathroom break. By the time you get out, you're going to have 20 or 30 minutes go by, and with the fast charging on batteries today, your battery is going to be mostly charged. Other technologies, such as the LFP batteries that we've been talking about, the LiPos, or even sodium-ion batteries, could also help with the environmental part of this. My take is that I drove a 90-mile car for 5 years. I had a Kia Soul.
Oh, the Kia, yeah, that's right.
And I'll tell you right now, range anxiety is real. Mm-hmm. And it got worse over time. Are we going to have enough battery to get where we're going? One of the most memorable times I had was when my wife called me, panicked, and said, the car doesn't show range right now and I'm not home. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I have 2 dashes for range and I don't know what to do and I don't know where to go and I don't think I can get home. Well, we got her to a charger, which was only about a mile away. And yeah, the car was in low range mode, but we were able to charge and get it taken care of. I have had a Model S for 4 years. I've driven that from here in Phoenix over to California on several occasions, both for vacation and in one case for work. And it has about 240 miles of range. It's never been a problem. I have no range anxiety with that. We never worry about running out. If I need to plug into a supercharger, I plug into a supercharger. The Volvo that I bought just this fall that replaces the Kia, same type of thing.
Got an issue with TikTok, keep going.
90 miles wasn't enough, but 240 miles I found to be more than adequate for range. The 300 mile plus ranges sure would be nice to have, in my opinion. I would really like to hear what you guys think about range as well.
Yeah, our audience, you bet, you bet. While we're waiting for some of those questions to stream in, by the way, is TikTok back with us?
Hold on 1 second, I'm checking here.
Okay. We may have lost TikTok here temporarily.
Yeah, we're back.
Okay. Welcome back, TikTok. Sorry for the interruption. Hang in there. YouTube Shorts, Deep Value Investing. Do you guys do a lot of collision repairs too? If so, do you know how much a front-end collision would cost to repair, whereby the left front bumper impact has disabled the tire and the battery? We try to stay away from collision repairs. We have the ability to do collision repair and some paint, but we confine ourselves mostly to doing the electronics repairs or the other types of repairs other than collision and paint. As far as giving any kind of an estimate for something like that, it would have to, we'd have to have eyes on it, or anyone that's going to do a accurate estimate is going to have to look at what you have. There are oftentimes hidden things. You know, it looks like a certain level of damage from the front, but once you dig inside and you take some measurements and you begin to realize it goes beyond just simply the cosmetic, which is visible.
What we found as well is that those collision repairs, they're not really unique to the electric space. You can take your collision damaged car oftentimes to a standard paint and body shop, and much of the collision repair can be done by the paint and body guys. Mm-hmm. The part that we specialize in, taking care of the electronics, taking care of the PAMs, taking care of the battery repairs themselves, those are the things that other people can't do. And so that's why we recommend as well that people, when it comes time to getting collision repairs, go ahead and feel free to go to your local body shop.
And some people at times feel that if they have a Tesla Roadster, for example, that it's an esoteric car and that no one can work on it, but you know, Tesla or some of the independents. There's certain things that are much better handled on a local level. Things that we subcontract out, for example, we don't do our own upholstery, we don't do our own seats. There are very carefully selected vendors that we have that specialize in that sort of thing, and they have the most current products, you know, typically that they install. Audio upgrades is another one. I would love to be an audio expert, but the technology changes every 6 months. You're much better served going to a high-end audio shop that does automotive, because they'll be able to present you a wide range of options, testimonials from customers, and so certain things can be done locally. The things that we recommend sending a Roadster cross-country for, or even a Tesla Model S, is things like battery repairs, electronics repairs. There aren't too many options locally, or sometimes none, for that level of repair. Instagram question, Wemick47, can I get a chance to work at Gruber Motor Company? You can send us your resume to ev@gruber.com. And we are currently only hiring for Phoenix, Arizona. But it's a cool job. It's cutting edge. What we do is pretty much unprecedented in the automotive world.
Jason DeFoss has commented again for us. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and information. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Jason, and we appreciate your participation.
We've got an Instagram comment about the background. It is an infrared shot. It's Shybo, there it is, Shyboy 888, taken with an infrared converted camera. And I'll be posting a few more of those. The results that you get with infrared is pretty dramatic. Enormous detail, and oftentimes things that you don't see in a normal color photograph. Okay. Looks like Scott Gruber has a comment from YouTube. He has a 2017 Leaf and is still waiting on a warranty replacement battery. It has been more than 3 months. I'm getting updated from Nissan, but no ETA. When will I get the battery? Any suggestions?
Yeah, I was going to say, Pete, you can mention how long people have been waiting for Roadster batteries, for example.
Yeah, the Roadster batteries, Tesla is finally beginning to accelerate their production on those. One of the things they did was they made a change about 3-4 months ago where they no longer allowed elective battery replacements for a Roadster. They are now only allowing battery replacements for cars that have been bricked, which in the Tesla Roadster world means dead, can't be driven, the battery is terminally ill. It's something that we even can't fix. So those are the ones getting priority now, and they're beginning to flush some backlog as a result of it. Eventually, I would expect them to go back into allowing elective battery replacements as they begin to clear the backlog of bricked cars.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing for the Roadster owners is that some of them have been waiting as many as 2 or 3 years. I wish I had better suggestions as far as the Nissan batteries. I'm not sure that I have a lot of them.
Supply chain problems are real.
Pete,
Yeah.
we are over an hour, so if you want to wrap up here.
Okay. All right, if there are any final questions that anyone would like to ask, we are getting ready to wrap up this session of the Gruber Morning Show podcast.
Got one statement here. Hold on.
There's one more coming in. In the meantime, I want to thank everybody for being in our audience, TikTok especially if we went down for a while and we lost you.
Well, and Pete and everybody, I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to stand in for Zane.
Yeah.
This has really been a fun experience, an exciting experience. I hope to be able to do that again at some point in the future as well.
You know, as Zane points out, this is really fun for us. We enjoy all of you joining us. We enjoy the questions. We enjoy the community. And we also, well, here's one coming in from Burnt Finger Girl. I can't see the numbers there. Hello, guys. Loving your podcasts. Thank you for joining us. Well, again, these are aired Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8:30 Mountain Standard Time. We're streaming on a number of platforms, and we'll continue to expand that. There's some that I'm becoming familiar with, Truth Social, Parler, you know. We're going to attempt to hit all of them and get this message out.
One more there, Pete.
Yes,
Okay.
Our last one is from Deep Value Investing, commenting back to us again. He says, "You're saving the world with this company, and we thank you. We need more of you in every single state."
Thank you. I'm glad you acknowledge that. You know, I look at the planet these days. I look at the severe frigid temperatures. I look at the floods in various parts of the world. We need to start healing this planet. And alternative energy and electric vehicles is definitely one of the areas that we can have an impact and begin to turn things around. LinkedIn, Punraj Tangaraj, thank you and nice session today. You're more than welcome. We will see you next Tuesday at 8:30 Mountain Standard Time if you care to join us. We don't have any new videos being released this week, but I think we're working on some, so stay tuned. Those of you that have additional questions, check out our YouTube channel. We have a couple hundred videos out there that address a lot of the topics that are typically being asked in our podcast.
We look forward to having your comments, and thank you.
Thank you for joining us.